No answers that I felt were legitimate. He said essentially the same thing. He said publicly that he
Nani ba?
didn't have
Mana ni sabon?
case to get a stronger conviction and longer sentence. Quite frankly, I don't buy it. He struck me as somebody who really didn't fully believe or trust the victims that he was hearing from. One of the things that deeply disturbed me is that when he was asked about Jeffrey Epstein committing more crimes, including rape, after his release, Mr. Acosta's response was a legalistic one. Essentially, those assertions, those allegations hadn't been proven in a court of law, so he wasn't going to accept them, despite what we have heard even recently from the survivors.
You know, according to Chairman of your committee, Mr. Comer, Acosta also said today that he never saw President Donald Trump's name on any document related to Epstein. Of course, we do know that the Department of Justice has informed Trump that his name is in the files more than once. We know that to be the case. We know that he was told about that. But Comer says Acosta said he never saw President Trump's name in the files. So, do you believe that?
I think when the transcripts are released
Yan, bawa pa?
and reviewed, the most common
Labay to eh.
from
Labay ko na kon.
Acosta today was, I don't recall. And a lot of the questions about Donald Trump, he responded with, I don't recall. So I think
Straw
there's a
na.
lot more.
Bugnaw kaya.
And look, to Chairman Comer,
Oh,
there's an
cold man
easy
yung gusto.
solution to this. If
Iwanan ko na po
what
ang
you
imong.
and Alex Acosta are saying are true in that respect,
Ano ka na,
release
bugnaw
the
po.
files.
Straw.
Chairman Comer could go to the floor of the House and sign the discharge
Yes,
petition,
sir.
take a vote to release the files. Why can't he do that?
Tilaw.
I really appreciate your time, Congressman. Thank you very much. I think one of the
Ilungan ka na na po,
interesting
once
words
ko.
you just said there,
Straw.
the words
Okay.
when the transcripts come out,
Mahang kwan pa.
legal
Ikaw,
becomes,
wait.
you used words by Alex Acosta today.
Maliwa ko sa mga pag.
I don't recall, which says so much
Before.
about now Danielle Hensky, one of the Epstein survivors who shared her story at the Capitol. She was first recruited back in 2004 at the age of 17 to give Epstein a massage in his townhouse on New York's Upper East Side.
Hol.
At the time, Danielle was
Hol, tunga lang.
struggling to make ends meet.
Tunga lang
She
ba?
was an aspiring ballerina in New York City, and she joins me here tonight in her first one-on-one television interview. And Danielle, I'm very grateful to have the opportunity to speak with you, as you've chosen to put yourself
Tunga lang.
out there. And
Tunga lang yung mga.
so this was an incredibly difficult time in your life. You were an aspiring ballerina in New York City, right? And going for it as big as you possibly could. And your mother
Comes
gets
down.
diagnosed with a brain tumor. Yeah. This is the context in which you meet Jeffrey Epstein. What happened?
Yeah, so I met him a little bit prior to that, and there was really a systematic breaking down that happened, that now that I look at it, there was quite a bit of manipulation that happened leading into that moment where I did bring him the brain scans, and in that moment, that was when the abuse really ramped up, and he said, what will you do for this? What will you do for me? And it felt like, yeah, it really, exactly, yeah, and it really felt like a dire situation in my life, so he offered, he said, you can either recruit more girls or you're going to have to do something for me. And I didn't recruit anybody. I didn't want to recruit anybody. I was not, ever even going to tell anybody about what was happening to me. I was so ashamed of it. But the manipulation held me there for so long. And so, yeah.
Because you thought basically, if I allow him to rape, if this happens,
Yeah.
I could help my mom.
That's true, yeah. And he also, I mean, there were so many things
Gamay lang
leading
ko
up to this that he was trying to find the way in.
Hindi na Milo.
He would always
Aron
talk
ka na
about,
dun.
I know ballet masters, I have
May
studios,
kagalain.
I haven't, couldn't really find the way
Milo.
in until I gave him the brain scans, and I thought that he had made all this money through the medical profession, and it turns out, of course, that was untrue.
Ah, kaya
But
tamis,
at that
lumagyan
moment,
to.
I did feel that, was where it was coming from. So,
Magkano po?
I never brain scans, and the abuse stopped up, and then he knew he had to be the cleaner, so.
Dungan ka na po.
I had a year, yes, I was 18.
Sige, gamay na po. Napay gamay mo.
Not great.
Sige, okay ko.
So as you sit here tonight and you talk about this,
Ah, ikaw
as
rin.
a victim
Kampunta
of
po sa ngayon.
survivor,
Yeah.
you know, when you hear, what I think the congressman just said, that the most common, the words used the most today by Alex Acosta, who did that deal with Epstein in 2007, or I don't recall, you know, who's sitting next to how do you respond to that?
I mean, I think that, unfortunately, I think survivors voters are quite used to that. We're getting that a lot from politicians that are, I don't recall that this happened. I can't. And it's turning a blind
Diri butang pa,
eye
pwede mo
to
vlogan, diri butang
survivors.
diri. Na.
And I think there has been a systemic breaking down where I feel that, you know, we sat at the House Oversight Committee, was part of that, was in that room, which was very special to be a part of because it did feel nonpartisan in that moment. But as we sat there, we listened to each other's stories in chronological order. And we started with Maria Farmer's story in 1996. In 1996, I was 10 years old, and she's not the oldest victim. Actually, we now know Jess Michaels came forward, and her abuse began in 1998. I was 5, you know. So when you look at starting with Maria's story in 1996, and you work your way down the table, you start to see the breadth of this, and it is absolutely appalling that the justice system has failed us time and time again. And we ended up talking about Acosta in 2008, and there was a victim who sat there at the House Oversight Committee and spoke of. She's also not the only one who mentioned this. Epstein was in an ankle monitor on work release with the police at the door, and and she was being abused. And so while he's on that, allowed to be out, he was.
Kanya pala ako kontra load mo.
And that's on record, you know, and that was in front of the entire Oversight Committee. So when we hear
Himo dato mo palit tagan ko.
you know, we're not credible, or that the host, all of these things, it is so personal to survivors, and it's so nonpartisan, and so I don't, you know, dig deep because I promise you survivors for
The FBI Director Kash Patel was questioned this week about whether there
Apple pa,
were
Apple pa.
victims were trafficked to other men. We know there were more than 1,000 victims, Danielle, every one of them.
Apple.
With face and name, just like you,
Yeah.
were in those files. We also know there are other men, we know their name.
Hey, Kawi.
But Kash Patel said, and I'll quote him, that there have been no details brought to me launching a new indictment, and he continued to say they haven't seen more names, okay? Have you,
Gani?
what do you say to that?
Paksiyo.
I think it's so,
Paksiyo ba?
it's so painful. Like,
Lagi
I
na?
see a lot of victims,
Paksiyo, paksiyo ba?
it hits sort of a wall and really felt,
Nakakaon na?
you know, the
Na, mga kaon?
comment. We're human, but beyond that scope, I
Sorry,
think
post
it's
mo na bukod mo eh.
quite a bit more. I think there's a real deficit in understanding and knowledge because it's most of it is in the established public. You can go and find these
Yan na ba?
things. I mean, look at Keelan Maxwell was convicted on 4 counts out of 5 counts. That in itself should say enough. So I really do advise him to do a bit more homework.
All right, well, I appreciate you, Danielle, thank you very much for.
Imong tintulog yun pa, kung ano no? Alas 3 panaog.
Later,
Tintulog niyo ba?
you could wanna just not.
Alas
talk
3
about
pero
it.
alas 6.
And you are choosing to put yourself through it, thank you.
Thank you so much for having us. Thank you.
And next, J.D. Vance's former classmate and friend weighs in on the vice president's rhetoric in the wake of Charlie Kirk's murder.
We have to talk about this incredibly destructive movement of left-wing extremism.
Daddydeedodu, no?
And Willie Nelson, Dave Matthews, Bob Dylan on stage together right here on CNN.
Ginagawa isda pa? Nanood to? Ito to balik.
Inside Africa, see a continent in transformation as
Kaya ito pinagto niya, ang lakaw.
of culture, technology, and industry across Africa and beyond. Meet the agripreneurs using their savvy business skills to uplift communities across Ghana.
You have to start thinking about how do you create that value in a way that's good for the climate and that's good for people.
Inside Africa on CNN in association with Zenith Bank. Mongolia, a country where heritage meets innovation.
There's a lot of room for development.
With more phones than people, innovation isn't just happening, it's accelerating.
We are opening the global market into employees.
Meet the ambitious projects transforming Mongolia's
Coke.
present and future.
Ano naman Coke? Ice cream, ice cream. Ice cream. Coke. Coke lang. Kamay lang ha.
Blueprint this weekend on CNN. Hybrid Request.
Ice cream lang doon.
Perain. Ice cream. Ano ice cream? Kayo, ice cream kayo. Ganun. Sayo na kayo. Ice cream ka. Supra ka na. Oh. Dos, ano? Nasaan yung kaya po dali?
This weekend on CNN, in association with Turkish Airlines.
Di na ka na mo kon, ako na ikaw na. Itlog, di na ka? Bawi taon niya. Pa, nakakay-tambal sa kabuk. Every morning. For 30 days. 18 days na lang ta. Pataw na natin. Di na ka ni? 18 days na lang atong kulang na tambal pa. Kanang blue. Pro. 18 days na lang. Kana, fights na.
What's the latest in the world of transformative technologies? CNN's Becky Anderson meets with the clever minds shaping our future in Abu Dhabi.
This is not a field that is well understood.
Hear how the Emirates is integrating AI with sports and art for new lived experiences.
This will be better than our imagination.
Plus, new opportunities in healthcare.
This is about preventing and treating chronic disease very specifically.
Intelligent future. This weekend on CNN.
I'm Natasha Bertrand at the Pentagon, and this is CNN. Tonight, the White House not letting up on taking on transgender rights, as Trump allies are painting transgender people as violent in the wake of Charlie Kirk's murder. The suspected shooter's partner is transitioning from male to female, and erroneous reporting in the hours after the shooting said there were transgender messages on the shooter's ammunition.
I can't name, including probably like Al Qaeda and the Taliban, a group that is more violent per capita than the radical trans movement.
Antifa has embraced these transgenders. It's just become one big mess.
Tyler Robinson was not MAGA. He was in a relationship with someone who identified as furry and trans. Our friend now, Sophia Nelson, former close friend and Yale Law School classmate of President J.D. Vance, who supported her gender-affirming surgery way back in 2012. And Sophia, I know a regular of the show, are very familiar with you. Thank you for coming back.
Okay pa?
So
Itlog?
you hear all this, and there's a lot more where those few examples came from. Are you afraid by this effort that's being put out to try to blame the transgender community for Kirk's murder?
Certainly I am, Erin, and thank you for having me. Good evening. We are scared, and let's stick with the facts. First, J.D. Vance has welcomed me into his home and to his wedding. He knows, and I was then and am now, a transgender rights activist. He knows that we're not dangerous. And if we look at the facts, Erin, there's been well over 5,000 mass shootings, unfortunately, since 2013. Of the perpetrators of those shootings, 5 have been trans. Trans people are 1 to 2% of the population, but less than 1/10% of the mass shooters in this country. So there's simply no evidence to support these claims, and rather this is some moral panic and effort to stir up hysteria to target a marginalized and small group of people in this country.
And you just laid out, by the way, right, just like factually math, that the disproportionate argument that Donald Trump Jr. just made was inaccurate, right? But when you look at it out there, since 2022, right, 3 of the mass shootings, you mentioned, 5 over out of those thousands. But
Sabi yung bata sa'yo, maging ligo.
in
Basta sa isang ligo.
2022, where the person responsible identified as
Suba.
transgender or non-binary, and that does include the Minnesota school church shooting
Naman.
last
Ano
month.
ba?
So obviously it's a
Buwi
fraction
ka?
of mass shootings in America.
Ha?
And yet you do hear this notion that transgender people are disproportionately violent because 2 of the most covered shootings, there have been multiple mass shootings in the past couple of months, but 2 of the most covered have been Minnesota
Milo.
and obviously Charlie Kirk's
Kaya pamili.
assassination. So how do you combat this notion if facts aren't going to be enough?
I mean, all I can say is I know that I'm not dangerous. I know my community is not dangerous. And I suspect that the people parroting this rhetoric also know that. What's happening is leveraging
Di ba
a
nga
very
kami?
terrible tragedy and
Imong kami?
political violence
Imong-
is both morally wrong and counterproductive. And my heart goes out to everyone who's mourning Charlie Kirk, including the vice president. I know they were close friends. But political violence is endemic to this country. 10 of our 47 presidents have been subject to assassination attempts or assassinated. What we can decide to do is how we respond to that. Do we weaponize it to engage in collective punishment like we did after the Japanese internment or post 9/11 with the mass
Korok
surveillance
wala.
of
Asa may puso ko niya na po.
like the
Hindi marot.
currently trying to do to transgender people
Yeah.
right now? Or do we tamper down the rhetoric and try to find common ground like other people are trying to do, but I'm not seeing that coming
Puso na to.
from the White House right
Puso na to.
now. It's scary, and in the history that I'm
Gani
pointing
to.
to, I think it can be quite tragic.
What was said about US presidents, I think, with a lot of people thought.
Coke.
wow,
Coca?
I hadn't thought
Para,
about it quite
Coca?
that way.
Coke.
So, because thank you for putting it
Iced
out
tea.
there that way. The vice president, your
Iced tea.
friend, former friend, has placed
Ay, stay ka?
just in one
Totoo ko.
place on the political left, okay? He said things like this.
We have to talk about this incredibly destructive movement of left-wing extremism that has grown up over the last few years. Why Charlie was killed by an assassin.
So is that the person you knew?
No, but what I'm concerned with is leveraging this tragedy to engage in a political project, which
Diyos
is
tilulol.
to censor free speech
Kapay nabili ni gamay
and criminalize
Diyos tilulol. Kung
nonprofit
apple o ba?
organizations. We're heading down the
Uy, Diyos.
path of Putin's Russia, where it's no longer safe to be openly LGBTQ, and people are either returning to the closet or fleeing the country. And this kind of targeting of nonprofit organizations.
To my lobby,
So,
Ay, stay ako.
I
says because
Steve,
he
I
wrote
do.
an election, and he doesn't like the tone and tenor of newscast coverage of him. Too many stories he calls bad. It's illegal. News coverage he's
Why not?
he's
They
hurt
were
by, angered by, is illegal. Now, that is sure a far cry from the Donald Trump from just 8 months ago, who announced he was going to be a champion of free speech and against any form of censorship.
I will also to immediately stop all government censorship and bring back free speech to America. Never again will the immense power of the state be weaponized to persecute political opponents.
That was the promise. Never again will the immense power of the state be weaponized to persecute political opponents. We are seeing the immense power of the state, the immense power of the president to silence critics, to silence free speech, whether it's through actual action or simply threats, intimidation, a willingness to block mergers or hold up deals in order to get companies to bow, or law firms, or media organizations, or universities, or museums, or tech companies. That is the argument some have made on the right. Well, the administration didn't do anything to him. They didn't take him off the air. The FCC didn't do anything. ABC did. Their parent company, Disney, took him off. The ABC Disney CEO, Bob Iger, he reported the decision. But the backdrop to that decision is that the president has already shown to use the federal government, whatever levers he has, in ways not seen since the Nixon administration, and beyond what we saw in the Nixon administration, to lean on foreign broadcast media as a submission. And his FCC chairman has made clear on a regular podcast he wanted Kimmel gone. And a powerful ABC affiliate group who needs that FCC chairman's approval for a multi-billion-dollar merger did exactly what he encouraged affiliates to do.
We can do this the easy way or the hard way. These companies can find ways to change conduct and take action, frankly, on Kimmel, or, there's going to be additional work for the FCC ahead.
Well, that's FCC Chairman Brendan Carr on Wednesday, just hours before ABC pulled Kimmel live from the air, and he isn't done yet. Here he is yesterday saying he knew what's coming.
What are you talking about when you say not the last shoe to drop? Well, we're going to continue to hold these broadcasters accountable to the public interest, and if broadcasters don't like that, simple solution, they can turn their license in the FCC.
There's this today, including from a staunch conservative supporter of the president, Texas Republican Senator Ted Cruz.
And I gotta say, he threatens it. He says, "It's the easy way. It's the hard way."
Yeah.
And I gotta say, that's right out of Goodfellas. That's right out of a mafioso coming into a bar going, "Nice bar you have here. It'd be a shame if something happened to it."
But Senator Cruz also had this warning.
It is unbelievably dangerous for government to put itself in the position of saying, we're going to decide what speech we like and what we don't, and we're going to threaten to take you off air if we don't like what you're saying. And it might feel good right now to threaten Jimmy Kimmel.
Yeah.
But when it is used to silence every conservative in America, we will regret it. And so, again, I like Brendan Carr, but we should not be in this business.
Well, Jimmy Kimmel's remaining colleagues weighed in last night.
A lot of people are worried that we won't keep saying what we want to say or that we'll be censored. But I'm going to cover the president's trip to the UK just like I normally would. Well, guys, President Trump just wrapped up his 3-day trip to the UK, and he
Looked incredibly handsome.
ABC thinks this is going to satisfy the regime. They're woefully naive. And clearly, they've never read the children's book if you give a mouse a Kimmel.
From Comedy Central, it's the all-new government-approved Daily Show. With your patriotically obedient host, Jon Stewart.
Are the naysayers and the critics right? Is Donald Trump stifling free speech?
Of course not, John.
That, of course, was satire, with Brendan Carr once seemed just fine with in 2022. He said, quote, "Political satire is one of the oldest and most important forms of free speech. It challenges those in power while using humor to draw more people into the conversation." He also said this in 2023. "Free speech is the counterweight. It is the check on government control. That is why censorship is the authoritarian's dream." Well, now he is in a seat of power, and we are seeing how he is using it. The president, meantime, seems delighted by Mr. Carr today, calling him, quote, "an incredible American patriot with courage." He also, for the second time, got into it with ABC News' Jonathan Carr, who referred back to his words on Inauguration Day about bringing back free speech.
I just want to settle this free speech question, because you said that you restored free speech in America. Is that free speech including for people who are harshly critical of you, for your political opponents, for people who say things you don't
I
like?
become immune to it. I become immune to it. There's never been a person that's had more unfair publicity than me, and that's why your network paid me $15 million or $16 million, I believe, to be exact, George Slopadopoulos. And that's why CBS made me a lot of money too. And that's why I sued the New York Times 2 days ago for a lot of money. Because I'm winning the cases, and the reason I'm winning is because you're guilty, John. You're guilty. ABC is a terrible network, a very unfair network, and you should be ashamed of yourself. NBC is equally bad. I don't know who's worse. I think they're equally bad. And, you know, if you just stand there and act so innocent and ask me a question like that. But look, you paid a big price because you were dishonest, John. The reason I won that lawsuit was because you were dishonest. You were proven to be dishonest. And so you can't sit back and just say, oh, well, what do you think? You know, like you're some wonderful person. You're not a wonderful person. Frankly, you're a terrible reporter. You know it, and so do I.
But when noted on the New York Times lawsuit, the president said he was winning. Today, the judge threw it out, saying the complaint was, quote, improper and impermissible, unquote, in its current form. He added that the complaint is, quote, not a protected platform to rage against an adversary, and he gave the president's lawyers 28 days to file an amended version. So we begin tonight with the latest from CNN chief media analyst Brian Stelter. So what are you hearing about talks between Jimmy Kimmel, his lawyers, ABC?
Well, we're hearing there is no resolution.
Lo pago, lo pago.
ABC's late night
Paano,
program.
hindi,
48
hindi,
hours after ABC's
hindi.
hold Kimmel's. Meantime, as you just showed, President Trump continues to mislead the public about his pressure campaign against the press. Today, he repeatedly said that ABC and CBS, quote, had to pay him. I found that really troubling because ABC and CBS did not have to pay President Trump. They chose to pay subjects to make
Esa, yung lagi. Yung suka ka, yan na to yung pagsuka, no? Yun na sa kaya pala ko.
Today's ruling report
Hindi sa kapay ka,
out
hindi sa
that Wall Street against the New York Times shows that when
Tama ko lang ng likod, kaya ano ka, straight.
system,
Ano,
the rest
ano
of
ka,
the
ano.
evaporate.
Luwasasa na yung
Trump
kwan.
legal team has suggested that they will wait
Tara,
5
kumain ulit.
to 4 weeks. But it's important to recognize
Kaya parang straight na imong kwan,
strike
ulang.
against the media is sometimes
Mumbak ba?
actually asking
Straight sa isang bako, kaya bako mong kakigamay pa.
When Carr spoke out on Wednesday, Disney did
Nah,
not go to court to defend
straight
Jimmy
na.
Kimmel. Instead, the lawyers who are now involved, Anderson, are Kim's lawyers. They might be negotiating his exit, but right now, we don't know how this is going to end.
And what role, if any, do affiliate stations have in how this plays out? I mean, obviously, we know they have played a role in what happened to Jimmy Kimmel, and we talked about that. Sinclair, the largest owner of ABC affiliates, they've now they've demanded Kimmel, quote, issue a apology to the Kirk family and, quote, make a meaningful personal donation to the Kirk family and Turning Point USA.
Ayo, kay para rin
Put
ako.
the show back on.
Unsay bawas yung tugab? Unsay bawas yung tugab pa?
Highly unusual to me. They
Wala.
reflect the rightward conservative tilt of
Na
Sinclair's
inhale, exhale.
managers.
Pero exercise imong due pa, anak pa. Baba.
The stations and ABC as a network. That's why there may not be a path forward for
Diyo sa
him to
lino mo?
return, even if he wants to
Juice ma,
leave his
kay
staff
Lulul.
once they get back to work, which I presume
Paitan ka, kay tungkol sa ice cream no.
And this is
Saka nakaka-ice cream.
the pressure points.
Una na kato, di pa kayo naman to? Ninaud to?
President Trump can actually
Ayun na, sumusuka to, cool na siya. Doon ka itlog ginahurot, no? Ay, sara. Yung apple. Apple, dayon. Cerelac. Full na. Ayaw na, kamsukan. Suka ng sakto. Yan na po mga alas 10.
So we are seeing how these station group owners are vulnerable.
Aga-trend pa na iyang kuan. May pila ka kuan. Tudusay ka. Hawlag lang pa. Maulian ka. May naman kamkaon. Mabalik na sa sa kuan. Kasi ay mo ko sa.
Ugma, inyong tao, chocolate sumapa.
President Trump
Yeah, Brian, stay with us, join us now.
22, hindi, 22 sa Camilo. 21 pa manok pa, 21 manok. 22 rin Camilo.
Urban, Harvard law professor Rebecca Tushnet, and
22 man.
reporter for Los Angeles Times, Stephen Battaglio.
22 tayo nun.
Sense of
22.
Mike's next move, or is there another?
22. Ako pa na tayo nun, para dito kalibang.
And I think it just shows that people I've talked to who are close to Jimmy Kimmel know him well, say that he will not apologize. He will not come out there, and he certainly won't do what Sinclair is asking him to do, sort of absurd request to do a donation to Turning Point USA.
Mga
And that's going to make it very difficult to put him back on. And it's turning into an absolute public relations disaster for the Walt Disney Company.
Katugon ka na?
The writers
Diba? Kaisa?
their members were protesting outside of Disney headquarters today. I don't think Bob Iger was seeing his names on posters with the
Ako preso sa inyong may luha.
or photos of Donald Trump. It's getting extremely ugly.
Professor, what's so interesting about this, the way this all played out, is again the point that the president didn't have to, and the FCC didn't actually have to do anything other than speak out.
Wala pa imuha ng tapo.
The president has already
Lamnam
shown
unsa.
what he did with law firms.
Wala naman sa ako nagikuha. Manin mo matapo.
Pulling levers of pressure, he can get these organizations which have other business interests to cave. I mean, with law firms, it was, okay, your attorneys are not going to be allowed
Hindi.
into government
Strip
buildings,
search ko?
so you won't be able to meet with government
Ari pa,
officials.
ibutang ari
And you
pa.
have clients who need you to be able to meet with government officials. We will intimidate other people from other big corporations from hiring your firm. I mean, this is part of a pattern.
It's definitely part of the pattern, and the thing that's just very hard to swallow is also in that pattern is that the people who fight win. So fought back because this was cartoonishly unconstitutional. Easily won. So nobody needed to fold, and frankly, the same is true here, except as you said, some of them want to fold to get approval for their mergers. And if we want government not to be in the business of dictating content, one of the things we need is more competition, fewer have that place to
Okay,
send
David.
David, how does a supporter of the president square the president's comments from 8 months ago saying, you know, I'm going to pass this executive order protecting free speech, never again will
Itong
the
isa po
government
na.
use its, you know, immense power to silence anyone with these actions?
You know, Anderson, I like that for that the second tape you rolled that did show the president saying that, and I agree with Senator Cruz and associate myself with his remarks as he said in the Senate, right? I believe that he's exactly correct. Whether it's Elizabeth Warren pressuring Amazon to censor, you know, Google, censor searches for books on COVID, or whether it's Joe Biden, you know, pressuring Mark Zuckerberg during COVID to take things away, or whether it's Donald Trump and Brendan Carr pressuring, you know, in this situation. I think it's reprehensible. I think it's wrong. I think cancel culture in any form is wrong. But what I think Anderson is the nub here is really, look, Jimmy Kimmel and Jon Stewart and others, they bash the president night after night, and it's fine. It isn't satire. And it's part of the American system of, you know, debate and dialogue, and it's funny at times. What isn't funny, though, and what I think got Kimmel in the prop here, is, you know, the raw nerve of Charlie Kirk. I mean, the kid was brutally assassinated, basically on live television for the world to watch. We all saw what happened. We saw his widow mourning. He hasn't been buried yet. His service is this Sunday. But for Jimmy Kimmel to come out and be so insensitive in that moment, and really just repulsive, and not say that he's going to come out. Listen, if he'd have come out and said the next day, look, I overdid it, I really apologize on that thing, I shouldn't have said that, but I mean what I said about Trump. I think he'd still have his job. I think Americans understand. What I don't think Americans understand was kind of the mean-spirited attack on Charlie Kirk. Free speech is free speech, and the marketplace is going to police itself. You know, when your business model is attacked 50% of America, at some point, you know, the networks are going to say the local affiliates aren't going to be able to get advertisers from Tractor Supply or Walmart or the Trump supporters, and they're going to boot them out. And so I think the business decision of who you keep employed and who's funny, who's not funny. Look, Nate Bargatze and Anderson is the world's most successful comedian. Historically, it's a verifiable fact. Every record book he's broken.
Kung atong imong kuan pa, tissue pa.
You know what he isn't? He isn't political. He's just funny. He's just a funny guy. And so maybe the rule is, if you're going to try to have a late night show, be funny. I think Jimmy Fallon is funny. He doesn't cross over the line into like mean-spirited politics. So I think if Kimmel went back and said, hey, I am really sorry for offending Charlie Kirk's family and his supporters, what I said was insensitive, that'd go a long way in America. We're talking about healing and coming together, and for him to kind of dance on his grave, I think is just reprehensible.
Well, I mean, was anybody dancing on Charlie? I mean, as I remember, he put out a social media post expressing condolences to the family, and what he said and that we're putting it up there, but what he said on the show, which is my understanding of what the issue was with that the FCC was pointing to, and I think we probably have that, was a portrayal of how he said people in the MAGA world were doing everything they could to try to, you know, to try to make sure. I mean, do we have the play this clip? Because I didn't want to get it wrong here.
Some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them, and put everything they can to score points from it.
I understand it's I can see how you can see it's insensitive. I'm not sure that's dancing on the
Completely. Anderson, completely insensitive. If you were to do that to any other person, I mean, can you imagine somebody joking about, pick any other person's death in America, any political situation? It is just insensitive. It's you want to make fun of Donald Trump? Have at it. You want to make fun of any politician? Have at it. It is a full contact sport. To do that to someone who's dead, who's brutally murdered,
to me, it's a big criticism of his supporters as opposed to something. But I'm not here to speak for him. But I played the tape for that reason. David, thank you, Ron Stelter, Rebecca Taglio as well. To come in next, the surprising outreach Janice Van Jones got from Charlie Kirk the day before he was assassinated, and why Dan has paid tribute to a man that he deeply disagreed with. Dan was here to talk about it. Also tonight, the departure of our federal prosecutor who the president appointed, but then wanted gone when he would not do his bidding.
When I saw that he got two senators, two gentlemen that are bad news as far as I'm concerned, when I saw that he got approved by those two men, I said, pull him, because he can't be any good.
When you see the pain and the struggles of the victims, you cannot look away and feel the emotions with the combination of anger and also empathy and compassion to those people. My name is Samson Innocent, and I serve as the national director of the National Justice Mission in the Philippines and also the vice president of IDEM's program against online sexual exploitation of children. When I started to work on this issue in 2003, the trafficking of children for sex in bars and brothels is prevalent. But I can say that the Philippines has really gone a long way in terms of developing its capacity to address this issue. We are moving into bond protection model that for me will be the most effective strategy in stopping human trafficking, especially online sexual exploitation and use of children. We are seeing great progress already with more than 100 rescue operations conducted today, resulting in the rescue of more than 1,300 victims and children at risk, and more than 200 suspects arrested. Addressing this issue in the Philippines is really just one side of the problem. This issue is an issue of supply and demand. So we really need a global response to get this right.
How many people ask questions when actually they're going to these shopping malls? They don't ask where their products come from. My sister said, I'm child labor and textile industry. I'm also the founder of Empowerment Collective. My personal experience was in the fashion industry. We got married. We were 6 people. We were forced to work 15, 16, 17 hours a day. We did not have a bed to sleep on, sleeping on the clothes that we were producing. I feel like survivors are very essential because what we bring is lived experience and expertise of ideas and knowledge. We are human beings, and when people become aware that this product I am wearing somebody produced it, I think that it does not create slavery. It helps the planet and it helps